Welcome to the Patchwork of Belonging, a podcast where we unravel the threads of connection and together we explore what it means to belong in a world frayed by crises and narratives of separation. In each episode together, we journey alongside grassroots activists, climate refugees, artists, farmers, academics, conservationists, and cultural custodians who are reclaiming their heritage and their sovereignty. With them, together we explore what it means to rediscover old and to find new ways to belong and find connection. So join us in this radical act of storytelling, where we amplify marginalised voices and envision a resilient, interconnected future that our hearts know is possible. This week we meet Simon Mitambo, the king of bees. I was blessed to meet Simon and spend time with his community in August 2023 in Tharaka in Kenya. And then again, Simon and I met in May 2024 at the International Society for Ethnobiology Congress. And Simon and I had a chance to sit down and talk about belonging, connection to land, what it means to patch back together community and belonging after fragmentation. We talked about the co-opting of seeds, and of course, we talked about bees.
Mbetawa Simon Mitambo kuma Tharaka, bara ya Tharaka, na Tharaka iri mbari ya Kenya ya kirima kia Kirinyaga, na kirima ya Kirinyaga na ara wetuke wagi kirima kina gitumi muno nuntu ikio turaithagarira tukiromba kana ino ithwiro riua na ike timatumenya Tharaka inakwiri.
Simon is a proud Tharakan man, a trained Earth Jurisprudence Practitioner, and co-founder of Tharakan community-based organisation, SALT, the Society for Alternative Learning and Transformation. Simon is an ancestral wisdom and cosmology expert and a knowledge expert at the UN Harmony with Nature initiative.
Hoyorere mbwa hembwa, hoyorere mbwa hembwa, twana tware maituringwa na ntagata ng'ombe ciakanywa ikiringwa na ntaka. Hoyorere mbwa hembwa, hoyorere mbwa mbwa, hoyorere mbwa hembwa. They say Tharaka is the land of bees, and they say when we were coming, from wherever we were coming, there was this song we were singing. It used to go like, Oyorere, Mboa, Mboa. So Mboa is where we are coming from, and Oyorere is something that, these are like sacred sounds that really make feel, people gather energy. Oyorere, Mboa, Mboa, Oyorere, Mboa, Mboa. Twana twakira ituringwa na ntagata ng'ombe ciakanywa kiringwa na ntaka. Oyorere mbwa mbwa. Oyorere is a kind of warrior song that helps to pick energy and strength and vibrance and all that. My name is Simon. I come from Tharaka. Tharaka is one of the tribes in Kenya that live on the slopes of the Mount Kenya on the eastern side. The place is a bit dry, is semi-arid actually, and most of the crops that we grow there are those crops that are resilient to that kind of ecological zone. And the beauty is that the community there for a long time has been sidelined by the modern environment. And lucky part of it is also that they depend a lot on their culture, how to use their traditional seeds and medicine. And this has meant that when most of other communities are suffering from the loss of their traditional seeds, the loss of their values, the community has remained very, very, very upfront on that side. And part of what I've been doing now with the community is also to appreciate that we have elders who have deep ecological knowledge about their area. And so I've been working with them the journey of community dialogues, where we meet in circle and we discuss issues that affect us. First, we tell our story of origin, which is very important because it unites us when we get to know we are one being and we belong to one ancestor. We feel like we are children of the same mother. And this story of origin also gives us all the other stories, because for us, everything has a story. Because when we started also to meet, the first question was, where is our food? We need our food, because we realized we had also stopped eating our own food. In fact, we had to eat bread and a soda, and then we asked ourselves, what are we really doing? Since that time, we started bringing our seeds, looking for them wherever we could find them. And then the next meeting also, people asked, are we also protecting our sacred site? How are they doing? Where are the custodians? And they started looking for elders who can conduct the ceremonies and rituals on this potent site, because the sacred sites are also very important areas of ecological, spiritual, and cultural importance. In the sense that they help to regulate a lot of ecosystems there. And again, from a cultural perspective, people see them like they are churches, the places where they go to worship, to connect with the ancestors, and that kind of thing. And so we begin to bring elders together. Then the other day they said, now we have been coming for some of this dialogue for so long, we don't see the young people. Where are they? Now the business of trying to look for young people, and actually this is what made me and my other clan members to start a school which offers holistic approach to learning, so that within the school year we have embedded a lot of these culture and nature issues, where we expose children to natural environment. They begin to learn that also the elders have knowledge. They teach them names of trees, the botanical names and all, and the medicinal value and other sacred ritual value related to that, and also their customary law. So with this, we have worked like a process of discovery, not really saying this is what we want to do, but everything leading to another, and like that. It's like what we can call the theory of emergency, where one thing leads to another, another leads to another, and then we find ourselves swimming within the streams of different aspects of things.
As I previously mentioned, I first spoke with Simon in August last year in Nanyuki, Kenya, at the General Assembly for the Global Tapestry of Alternatives, and Simon and his team at SALT were the co-hosts for the assembly. Now, the assembly brought together over 50 people from all over the world, and that is why you will hear Simon being translated into Spanish for the Spanish-speaking delegates. During this Kenyan trip, I was also fortunate enough to visit Simon's community of Tharaka, his ancestral land situated about 230 kilometres north of Nairobi. It's nestled in the foothills of Mount Kenya, and the landscape is made up of the most beautiful, deep, dusty red earth, and it's so very abundant. And Simon is working along with some of his colleagues at SALT to revive damaged and eroded cultural traditions and ecological diversity of their lands. This includes the waters, like the kithin. They do this via regular community dialogues and eco-cultural mapping processes. And when we visited, Simon's community gave us the most incredible welcome I have ever had. We were greeted with song and dance and the most delicious millet porridge I've experienced.
By women.
Se prepara por las mujeres.
Men do not prepare that one.
Los hombres no la preparan.
It's a taboo for men to find men preparing this one.
Es un tabú encontrar hombres preparando este tipo de bebida.
And they grade it with a grading stone.
Y la muelen con la piedra.
And the women are very specialized. They can make different types.
Y pueden hacer diferentes tipos de esta bebida.
I don't know the one you are drinking because I've not tasted what type it is, but
va a ver qué tipo es.
Types.
Porque hay muchos diferentes, se va a ver cuál es.
Ingo beri bukia wa medembe mingi, kwe bubwa getindio, kwe bubwa kirario, kwe bubwa wambioka ile.
Ngite.
Bwa kirodio na ndite. You know there are many types.
Hay muchos tipos.
There are many types. There is the one that when they prepare immediately, they cook it. It doesn't. Once they prepare, they cook it immediately.
Hay uno que apenas lo muelen, lo preparan inmediatamente.
It doesn't have that kind of a taste.
Y no tiene este tipo de sabor.
And there is the one that they prepare, then it slips over up to the following day. Then they cook it. It has a different taste.
Y hay otro que lo muelen, pero lo preparan hasta el día siguiente y ese le da otro tipo de sabor.
So yo lo voy a comer por el cobobo. Balaba kunda. So that one they call it kirorio.
Este le llaman kirorio.
Yeah, you feel it has some sourness, eh?
Sí.
It's a bit sour.
Tiene un poco de acidez y también fermented, ¿no?
Yeah.
Simon, it's
It's fermented, yes.
Está fermentado.
Yeah, it's fermented. So there is one that is not fermented, there is one that is fermented in a special way.
Hay unos fermentados y hay otros no fermentados.
So that is to welcome you. Maybe we can continue to have our drink.
Podemos seguir tomando.
But maybe we can also have a song. I don't know.
When I came and spent time with your community, the feeling I had more than anything, there was a sense of ease. Like it felt to me, and maybe this isn't true, but it felt like everybody had a place where they belonged. Like everything just felt like you had a really clear rhythm. It felt like people knew their place somehow. I can't explain it, but we arrived and it felt welcoming, and there was so much song and music, and amongst all the noise there was a feeling of calm. And what is it, Simon, that keeps the glue together? Because there's obviously a real glue in your community. You said when we were there that during COVID nobody got sick. What is it? Why is it that your community, and I'm sure, and I know it's difficult and there's challenges, and it sounds like you've had to relearn and regain some of that power, but how has your community managed to stay together?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And you are not wrong feeling that people are together, they're in solidarity, because when we started walking our journey together with the community, we said that we need to build on our foundations of our identity. First, like I said, we started with our story of origin. So our story of origin is actually the foundation of everything. Because when we told our story of origin, it tells us we came from Boa, which is also not really a physical position, but what also it weaves the aspect of spiritual leadership that comes in, the aspect of the clan governance system that also comes through that story, and all these weave aspect of coming together, and our approach of having constant dialogues, because most of the work is built on dialogues. Almost every month we have dialogues coming together, makes us feel like we are fragmented, feel the heel of the fragmented. Actually, the other thing I want also to say is that that part of work has been like healing. So people feel dearly they are healed. Because the moment you begin to understand that we are walking this journey with the confidence and we are being appreciated, because what you find also with some of the leaders, like elders, they were feeling like they have no space in the modern society. So that feeling and of course in dialogues also bring everybody, even the young people. And the young people also learning that elders have knowledge, and also elders learning their role to lead the young people. So everybody feels that is in solidarity, living together, and that has been part of healing. And the COVID you mentioned is also something that taught us a lot of lessons. When COVID came, first of all, there was a big shock, even in our community. People were asking questions, now what is happening? And of course the government advised people to keep away from each other and that kind of thing. And while we were there, I called out some elders and asked them whether they know anything about COVID. And from the story of origin again, they said sometimes back there was something they think was similar to this kind of disease. And that by itself gave some relief that, okay, there is an idea that there was this something they called a mukambe. And I asked elders if we could come together, because one of the other questions was, okay, if it was there, how did it happen? They said there was a particular issue that needed to be done. And when we came together, of course, observing the government regulations of keeping some distance, we performed a ratio, and that by itself was also relieving, because everybody left feeling the disease is worked upon, which was also not misleading, because of course we found later that this was necessary. But also the emphasis was also on the traditional herbal medicine, traditional nutritious foods, which we also found that we had revived almost all that was needed. The millet, the different herbs, we had all that at our point. In fact, even people elite who are coming from the city, they came. It brought like some change of power relations, that the people came from city were depending now on the local knowledge to get the herbs, to get the food. To be food sovereign, it means that you are in control of what you eat. You are in control of your food system. So it's very critical, because it is also a way of being autonomous in that sense. So once we lose seed, when we talk about seed, when we lose seed, we lose everything, because we lose our autonomy, we lose our identity, we lose our political power also, and we lose our knowledge, and we lose the meaning to life, because it is through the sins that we bring all this back. So it's very important to have food sovereignty. It means that we can produce enough food for our own needs, and we can feed ourselves. We don't have to depend on other people to give us food, which is not culturally right, because we cannot feed on food that is not really culturally right. I remember one example of someone saying that I don't have food to feed the hungry people. The only food I have is for my dog. If they can eat, it's fine. But that is when you are able to, when you are put in a situation where you are eating that food that is not culturally right, really, it's very demeaning. It makes you lose your integrity and all that. And I think it's very important that the seed sovereignty, that we have enough of our seeds. It also means that we can plant our seeds the right time. Normally, when the farmers don't have their own seeds, our experience has been that sometimes they run here and there to look for seeds. And I come from a community, for example, where the rain is not a lot. So people need to plant in good time. But when you don't have your own seeds, it takes time either to wait for the government to provide you with the seeds. And sometimes some of these seeds come when the rain is almost gone. So it's also very important that we have our own seeds. We are in control of our own seeds when we need them, when we harvest, when we need it for ceremony, and all that.
And Simon, what do you think is the biggest threat to crop diversity and seed sovereignty in your community, but also in Kenya? Like when I was with you last August, I went to visit my very dear friend Milka in just outside Kitale, and I was really heartbroken to see that so much of the maize was all GM. It wasn't indigenous. It wasn't indigenous seeds. What are you seeing both in your community in Tharaka and also in Kenya in general about seeds?
Yeah, there is a lot of government promotion of the hybrids. Even in my own local community, they are promoting those. And I think it is also the challenge also with the government that they belong to the conventional thinking that the hybrids will do best. It's a big threat, but also what I've seen also with our community members who are very convinced. Some of them actually pick them, and sometimes they pick and they give animals, and most of them really still continue to grow our trees. But like the situation also with Milka, I see that threat also. There is a lot of distribution. But also the other thing is also that sometimes it comes late, and it disappoints farmers a lot, and most people are also losing faith in that. Yeah, the good thing also in my community is that especially with the maize, they don't grow a lot of it. They grow these other crops that also do very well within dry land eco zone. So yeah, we are also an advantage that way, so that people grow millet. They don't have those hybrids for millet for now, but of course there are for sorghum and some of these other crops. But definitely is this government initiative of giving out the hybrids. Yeah.
It's such a shame because it seems that these government initiatives are really persuasive. They are really good. They're salespeople, right? And I think the stories and the promises that get told, they're really powerful. And I if we take the case in India, in the Punjab, so many farmers were sold these seeds and sold promises, and then when it was, I always forget, I think it was a drought or whenever anything goes wrong and those seeds can't produce the food, then the GM company says, well, it's in the small print that we were never going to protect you, or it doesn't cover your quote unquote insurance. And so I know that in Punjab there was a high level of farmer suicide because they couldn't produce anything from their seeds. And it makes me really concerned that there's this notion of modernity, like by you buying this specific hybrid seed, this seed, it means you're modern, you're progressive. And I feel the level of marketing is deeply manipulative, but it's then very difficult to name this and to call it out to these companies.
That is really very true. This is also something that has happened also with our community. Sometimes back, Agra was fronting this idea of giving farmers loans for subsidies. So they give them fertilizer, they give them the seeds, they go and plant. when they harvest and sell, they go back and pay. And actually, they were doing it through one of the banks there in Kenya. And what happens is that when the rain failed, there was no harvest at all. And the farmers were in serious problems because they had to be forced to pay. Some of the farmers, because some of them were women groups, some of the husbands' salaries that they knew from were being paid through the bank, they were attached to that loan. And that is when also we got to learn that it was getting to very serious time. And then they trying to negotiate with the bank to give them time to try and plant again. But now the problem was, because this is a loan, it accrues interest. And it becomes very, very, very complicated. So sometimes the government probably, or whoever, I don't know if they have good intentions or whatever it is, but those intentions, whether good or bad, they really make farmers suffer a lot.
As you hear Simon talking about AGRA, he is referring to the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, which is essentially an alliance sponsored by numerous parties, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as other agrochemical and biotech companies such as Yara, Corteva and Bayer. And they all have an intention of promoting hybrid and genetically modified seeds, chemical fertilizers and pesticides, all of which are used in exactly the type of industrial scale agriculture that has absolutely failed to deliver on what they call better food systems, and has definitely failed to deliver on food sovereignty by its very nature. What's more, according to an article in Al Jazeera that came out last year, which we'll include in the show notes, in countries like Kenya and Nigeria, both of which have embraced industrial agricultural policies, as Simon says, the number of undernourished people has grown by 44% and 247% respectively. And as we're seeing the world over, where corporate-backed initiatives such as these are giving farmers loans for subsidies, it can often be a slippery slope for many farmers. And as Simon has just described, is the antithesis of what food sovereignty is all about. And if you'd like to find out more about food sovereignty, I can't recommend more checking out the work of La Via Campesina and the Land Workers Alliance. La Via Campesina is a fantastic, inspiring organisation, a collection of people around the world working for food sovereignty, for land justice, for land rights. Check it out.
Seed is not only food for us, it's a way of coming together, it's a way of connecting with our ancestors, it's a way of maintaining a relationship, it's a way of our identity. And one of the most beautiful things is that when you come to my community, you really feel you have arrived to that community. One of the things we ensure is that you don't eat the food you are eating where you are coming from. It has to be like, this is a different community. You find food from millet, you find food from all the crops that we grow, and that tells you that you cannot find this kind of food other than here. So that is also something that we find pride in, you know. We say when you come to a community, let us not give you the bread that you are just eating in Bantu. Let us not just give you rice that you are eating in Bantu. Let us not give you any other food that you are eating in Bantu. Even the type of vegetables should be different from the kind of vegetables that you are eating there. So you can find a lot of, sometimes I've also taken pictures with some of the scenes we have revived. Some of these were totally lost. And we took a lot of pride in trying to look for where we can find them. You find one elder coming with a few seeds and then multiplying, and all of a sudden we have a lot of food from this. And when you try to look back, you really see that something good has been happening. Yeah, you find a lot of pride in that. But again, also, there are times we find difficulties in some of these things. And we find blockages. Not that we also don't find blockages, but we really say we trust the process, and we do our best, and we have always found that a few time later, something has really been resolved. This thing happens very, very well. It's like what we can call miracle really, but that's what happens in most cases. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking with me, Simon.
Thank you.
Let's go and eat. Something I really appreciate about Simon, which doesn't necessarily come across in my interviews with him because he's really humble, is how committed he is to his community, but also he has a perspective on the impact of the global policy and looking at the bigger picture. And his work is really amazing with the Gaia Foundation. And if you haven't checked out the Gaia Foundation, I highly recommend you to do so. Big shout out as well to Georgie Stiles, because Georgie has been really part of an amazing movement around Earth jurisprudence. Now, Earth jurisprudence can be defined in many ways, but ultimately it is the recognition that the Earth is embedded in a lawful and ordered universe. And this comes from the Gaia Foundation website. Our Earth uniquely sustains life as we know it through a complex system of living processes and laws. As a self-regulating planetary organism, all species, including humans, are inextricably subject to these laws and processes. And Simon himself has been involved and at the forefront of setting up the African movement for Earth jurisprudence. And he's part of this new generation of Earth jurisprudence practitioners who are trained by Gaia. These practitioners essentially accompany indigenous and land-based peoples across Africa to protect and revive their earth-centered traditions, to live well with nature as their ancestors did before them. And I feel this concept of rights for nature is something that's only relatively recently has come into the fore, has come centre stage in the kind of conservation and ecological movement, because there's essentially the growing recognition that, of course, Gaia is alive. Of course, the river is a living being. Of course, the mountain is a living being. And living beings deserve rights. They deserve protection. And so I find this personally an incredibly exciting movement of really recognising the laws of the natural world.